This video is brought to you by NAD amplification with Eigentach technology, the M33, M28, and C298. Click to nadelectronics.com for more information.
Should I buy a DAC if I only listen to Spotify or Apple Music or any other lossy streaming service? This is a question I still get in the wake of my, should I buy a hi-fi system for my Spotify? Because obviously if you're coming from a Bluetooth speaker or a soundbar, stepping up to a pair of stand mount loudspeakers like those behind me and an amplifier to power them is going to be a major leap forward for your music listening experience. But the DAC seems to be this sort of questionable area for some people still, in that some people are emailing me asking, isn't my phone good enough on my laptop? And even if it's not, when I step up to a better DAC, even like the Schiit Modi 3 or the topping D10S that I covered a few weeks ago, if I get one of those, won't it make my Spotify sound worse? Because I've been told by so many audiophiles that my Spotify is garbage. And I can see where these audiophiles are coming from, even though their message delivery is lousy. So if you are listening to Spotify on a very, very, very highly resolving hi-fi system, you will hear the difference between it and a lossless service. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So firstly, we need to talk about what is lossy, just briefly. So Spotify at its maximum setting, I think it's called very high, encodes all audio at 320 kilobits per second. Now, if you compare that to uncompressed CD quality, it tends to operate anywhere between, because it's variable, between 600 kilobits per second and 1,411 kilobits per second. So that means that Spotify is clearly throwing musical information away. And they do that to crunch the file size down so it's easier to stream and so it doesn't take up as much storage space if you've offlined it to your device. Whereas hi-fi tiers on streaming services like Tidal, Qobuz, Deezer, Amazon HD, they stream in FLAC, it's lossless, nothing being thrown away, but obviously higher bit rate, more storage on your phone. So, won't a better DAC just make the disparity between Spotify and say Tidal and Qobuz more obvious? Well, that depends how far you go with your hi-fi system. But I want to tell you a story because I wasn't always a hi-fi reviewer. Like 15 years ago, I was just a guy with a decent pair of speakers, a decent amplifier to power them. I think the speakers were Cricks, the amplifier was Red Gum, and I was using a Squeezebox Classic, or I think it was known as a Squeezebox 3. So it's a music streamer with a DAC built in. And then Logitech introduced the Squeezebox Duet, which had no screen, but it had this amazing remote control with a screen on it. And this is before smartphones were a thing. And it had a rotary dial, and I wanted that so badly. So I bought one, so I took out my Squeezebox Classic /3 and put in the Squeezebox Duet. And instantly I was kind of like, there's something wrong here. Like, I don't know what this is. And I didn't have any experience with DACs or anything like that. But I knew that something had shifted. And so after a few weeks, I went back to the Squeezebox Classic. I was like, oh, that's much better. And I did a bit of digging on the internet, as basic as the internet was back then, and discovered that the DAC inside the Squeezebox 3 that I'd started with hadn't been carried over by Logitech into the Squeezebox Duet. And so that was the most likely reason why they sounded different. Now, the lesson I learned in that particular scenario was that changing the DAC made more of, in this case, negative difference than what I'd done previously. So about a year prior to all of this, I'd re-ripped my CD collection. Initially, it was all MP3, and then I re-ripped it all to FLAC. And it did make a small difference, but not as big as the difference between these two Squeezebox streamers. So that was my first experience in how the difference between two DACs made more of an impact to my listening experience than the difference between MP3 and FLAC, or lossy and lossless. Spotify doesn't stream in MP3, they use something called Ogg Vorbis, but it's still lossy. All right, so what about in the year 2020? What do we do now? Well, you could take a Schiit Modi 3, a topping D10S, an AudioQuest DragonFly Black, and they would offer you much better sound quality with Spotify than if you're just coming out of your phone or out of your laptop into your integrated amplifier. And that's the key message here really, is that before you worry about the DAC, you really need to have the speakers in place and the integrated amp in place before you start fussing over DACs. But once you've got those things in place, you can start fussing over DACs. And they will improve the listening experience even if you're using Spotify or if you're using Apple Music, which uses AAC, I believe, to stream. Again, another lossy codec. And what about even better DACs, John? Because I have, for example, the Mola Tambaqui behind me here. And just to kind of drive this point home, I would rather listen to Spotify on this Mola into a hi-fi system than listen to Tidal hi-fi coming out of my phone or my laptop. And if Spotify is all you do, then you'll never know what you're missing out on, so it doesn't really matter. Because, as I've said many times, actually, the mastering of all of this music matters more than the delivery codec. But that's a story for a different day. Audiophiles will also tell you the room matters. It does, but if you're just starting out, that's not the time to be talking about the acoustic panels from GIK that I've got hanging on my walls, because not many people would want those on their walls, I don't think. But, you know, rugs and heavy furnishing can make a difference as well if you're starting out. So choose the best speakers for your room, then choose the best amp for your speakers. Then don't fret about Spotify, invest in a entry-level DAC, and then after that you can worry about what streaming service you use. If you found this video useful or encouraging, please hit the like button below. If you like my attitude to high-end audio that also encompasses lossy streaming services, then please subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.